Yes, I've had 10 leads for the month of December. And so I guess early on, I was still learning the process. And
Okay.
then maybe after the first week, maybe the second week in December is when I started trying
Using the
the,
process.
using
So,
the
so you had
process.
10 leads, 7 of which you've used the process on, and you've been doing this a month. So you got 3 leads before you were comfortable enough with the process to use the process. It's not going to happen overnight. You're probably going to have to do the training and then practice for a week or so. So you got 3 leads in that first week.
Right. I think the first step for me was to send out the comfort quiz and see what kind of responses I was getting from that, and then going over the comfort quiz answers with them.
When you
That
get
was the
in the
first,
door.
yeah, that was kind of the first step for me on, and then once I started getting comfortable with that, I moved on to following the full process.
Gotcha.
And then, so I've done that 7 times. And as you've alluded to, we've closed 6 and still have our foot in the door on the 7th.
Right.
So yeah, on the 6th lead, it was a furnace quote. They had called us, had been trying to get up with us for some time because we were a Bryant dealer. They had a Bryant air conditioner, and so they wanted a Bryant furnace. So they had just replaced the air conditioner 2 years ago, 2021. So 2.5 years ago, and they wanted a Bryant furnace to go with it. They had it broke down on Christmas Day, and so they called the large local company that was always available, and they came out and told them they needed a new furnace. Didn't really give them a good answer on what's wrong with it, other than it's old. And to me, it's not that old, but it's 12 years old. They told him he needs a new furnace. Control board's bad. That's what they told him. And so they scheduled a time for the guy to come out to give him a quote, their technician, their sales person. And he came out, offered his 3 quotes, and with that larger company, they're one of the higher price companies in the market, and it's all just single stage equipment. And it was a single stage air conditioner, so they just offered a single stage furnace. And in single stage equipment, especially, I mean, it's always oversized in our market because the furnace is just too big. And the air conditioner was oversized to begin with as well. So anyway, so he got up with our company because we're a Bryant authorized dealer.
Getting his
Came
3
out,
bids, right? As he was told.
yep, as he's been
Forever.
programmed.
Yeah.
As he's,
Got to get 3
so I
bids.
get,
Got to get 3 bids.
so I did talk to him on the phone. He allowed me to, or he gave me his email, so I was able to send him the comfort quiz with the what to expect email. He did fill out the comfort quiz immediately, and he had like a 10 on the summertime uneven temperatures and 9 in the winter. And then he had zeros for health and other and the other one. So I get there, they're boiling water on the stove. It was like the walls were sweating when I got there. That's how warm it was in there, because they were boiling water to stay warm. And of course, I don't think they have a humidity problem, even though they certainly did that.
That's probably not a regular occurrence, but
Right, right. So anyway, so we sit down and talk about the comfort quiz, and he says that he has zones. So he has a zone system, and there's one zone that won't. there's no air coming out of the vents at all. And how long has that been going on? He said, well, a year or two. I said, oh, really? So, I mean, what do you think's wrong with it? And he said, well, I had a company come out, the same company came out Christmas Day, and they said that some part needs to be replaced or whatever. So what did they give you a price on it? He said, yeah, they gave me a price, but I just didn't. We don't really use those rooms that much, so we just didn't fix it. And I said, that was a year and a half, 2 years ago. He said, yeah, that was about a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's okay. And so what kind of problems are you having with the furnace now? And he was talking about the control board. And I said, so that company come out, did they ever mention that, maybe that not having that zone operational, could that have any role in why your furnace failed? I mean, it's only 12 years old. Normally we see like 15 to 20 years out of it. And he's like, I don't know. I didn't really thought about that. I said, okay, well, and what else did they tell you? Did they give you a price as part of the furnace to repair the zone now? And he said, no, they didn't even mention repairing it. And I said, why didn't they mention it? He said, well, we didn't even talk about it. Well, why didn't you talk about it? He said, well, we were just talking about replacing the furnace. I said, well, did they ask you any comfort questions at all about uneven temperatures or humidity? No, they didn't mention anything like that. They just were there to give me a quote on the furnace. I said, okay. And so then we got, start talking about the going through some of the other questions. And, is there anything that you'd like for this new system to do that the old system couldn't do? And his wife was like, well, I mean, it would be nice to get those other rooms working, because I mean, it's like in the summertime it'd be 75 degrees in one room, and then those other rooms it's like 85 degrees, 10 degrees or more different. But that's not urgent. That's not necessarily the highest priority right now. We really just like to get some heat, because it's going to get worse, this winter. So we need to get that resolved. And so anyway, I showed them they did not watch any of the videos up until that point. And so I showed them, we watched the duct pressure video first. And so they began to make some sense to them. I couldn't test the static pressure because the blower motor or whatever wasn't operational because of the control board. But I did ask, the company that's been servicing it, have they checked the static pressure or the duct pressure? Have they mentioned anything to you about that? No, of course not. Unfortunately, I do hear that a lot. Well, let's go take a look at your equipment.
If I can't
So
offer you static pressure testing and you don't have the number, all the risk of your current ductwork is on you. And there's not anything that I can do to take that away. I'm sorry.
Right. And so we looked at the equipment, found out the air conditioner's a 4-ton unit. It's in a closet upstairs. They have a zone downstairs, zone upstairs. Still couldn't quite wrap my head around why there's 2 rooms upstairs that don't have air, because they weren't really on a zone by themselves. And so I was like, we're kind of look in your attic. Sure, look in your attic. And I could tell at that point that nobody else has ever asked to look in the attic, because they have a pull down ladder and we had to move a bunch of stuff to get to where they could open the ladder. And so I go up there, up in that attic, and you can see the bypass damper. You can see 3 zone motors. 2 of the zone motors had been replaced and the 3rd one had not. And so when the home was built, they put, I guess the way they branched off the ductwork, they put those two rooms on a separate zone motor, but they just pigtailed it to another. So as soon as that upstairs opens, both of those zone dampers open. Well, that
And
one's
one of
been
them's
shut.
broken, so part of the zone is getting served and the other part's not because of the two dampers. Gotcha. That makes
Right.
sense.
And so, and then so I'm sitting there thinking about um the the duct pressure and what would happen, when there's a call for air upstairs and not downstairs, and how that having that one closed would, even with the bypass damper, would create a lot of issues, probably overheating and things like that with the in the
Yeah, even
especially
if
with
the
furnace.
bypass gives you good airflow, having half of the zone work when it's the only zone calling is, trying to put out
Especially with a
air through a
four
straw.
ton air conditioner, 4 ton or 70, it was a 90,000 BTU furnace. It's 80% or so. It still requires a lot of cubic feet a minute to cool the heat exchanger. And so I'm thinking about that. I'll take a picture of the nameplate on the furnace so I can explain that better later. Then look at, a couple of things that, take some good pictures on what other improvements need to be made for code purposes or whatever. And also getting the good measurements for the installers so they'll have what they need when they get here to make the job go smooth. And then, I verify, I look at the breakers, take a picture of the breakers, and look at the outdoor unit, make sure I understand exactly what the size of the unit is and the age. And then we come back in, sit back down, we go over the 6 functions of an air conditioner. He's like, well, that's great and all, but I really just want to, we don't need an air conditioner, we just need a furnace. And so, we were talking about the importance of some of those other things, because somewhere in our discussion, I learned that he was on dialysis at some point in time, and he did the dialysis at home, and he's since gotten a kidney transplant, so he doesn't need it now. But at the time, he understood the importance of having a clean home because of risk to infections and
You
things.
breathe 300 gallons of air a day. How clean's that air?
No pet, you can't have a pet, things like that. So he understood that. So watch the 6 functions video, load matching. And I said, one of the reasons it is important is because load matching is important. So the house has a load, and the equipment has a load. And so you want those to match as often as possible. And unfortunately, most of the time, these systems are designed for like the worst day of the year, for heating. And so it's designed for the coldest day of the year, and it's really only that cold for a day or two of the year. And it's usually just for a few hours of those days. And then your equipment, even if that was the right size, it would be wrong the rest of the year because the load is different. But unfortunately, because your furnace is so oversized, it's wrong all the time. It doesn't get cold enough to need a 90,000 BTU furnace. And then I drew out a piece of paper the airflow based on, I showed him a picture of his nameplate on the furnace and the simple math on how much cubic feet of air needs to be moved to cool the heat exchanger while, draw out the heat exchanger. And it started making sense to him that you've got to move enough air to cool that down or it's going to overheat. And then once I knew that he started getting it, I asked him and said, so do you think that not having that zone working could have contributed to the fact that
Overheating
your
that
furnace,
box and the failure of your board.
right? And he said, well, that's a good point. And it's starting to make sense that maybe I need to get that fixed. And so,
Or lock it open.
right, lock it open. You know, and we've done that in the past before. And, you know, in retrospect, I probably should have spent more time talking about replacing it, the whole thing with a heat pump. And you and I talked about that some since then, but you know, I didn't really offer that while I was there. Simply because the air conditioner was so new, and I assumed that he wouldn't want to replace the air conditioner, but that wasn't part of the program. I should have offered it and let him decline that if that's what he chooses. So I wasn't clear on him that that was an option, and that was a mistake I made. So the he picked so I started explaining two-stage furnace to him and modulating, which is really just a three-stage furnace. And so, and then I had created the templates in pre-quote for the furnace. And so we were able to use the likely load range and show him what the likely load range would be for the heating. And for his home, it was somewhere between like 32,000 BTUs of heating to 48,000 BTUs of heating. And he was way outside. Even if you just look, it was a 90,000 BTU furnace, but the output was maybe 71 or something, which is still outside. So anyway, so I showed him what the output of a two-stage furnace would be. And
Let's stop here for a second. Likely load range for the folks that ends up not making sense to is basically the load range at 90% of houses that size. So when Jason says that the likely load range is between, what'd you say, 32 and 48?
Right.
32 likely load range is for a house that's tight. 48 likely load range is for a house that's a basket case. So even if you split and go straight to the middle, unless if you put a 48 on that house, it's likely oversized. Like you should be thinking that you want to get to a 32 on that house, or 3-ton, 36, because that's going to be sort of right in the middle of houses that size that are good houses. You know, that's a good house. That's a tight house, operates well, it's going to be comfortable. You don't want to oversize the equipment to a good house. And frankly, you don't want to right size equipment to a bad house, because there's still likely to be comfort issues that homeowners may decide to address. And if they fix the house, they're going to be walking away from comfort. And then eventually, if they walk far enough away from comfort with the wrong equipment, they're going to have to replace brand new equipment a second time. And we see this happen a lot, people replacing new equipment. And, you know, not my money, not my problem, but it seems sort of wasteful. Sorry for that. I just wanted to continue to repeat the likely load range thing so that it starts to sink in.
Perfect. So we explained, you know, the two-stage would put it in 40, on the low side, it would be like 47,000 BTUs would be the output, which puts him inside the range without knowing exactly the leakage of the home. And
dramatically reduces airflow requirement of what might be insufficient ductwork.
And then the modulating would go even lower, maybe to the low side of the range or just below.
But you're
have several
handicapped by the
stages.
4-ton air conditioner outdoors, so you can't go too small or it's a mismatch.
And so he, we've got the price ranges on the equipment in the free quote process. And so he quickly saw that he began to see that I really don't think these things will fit into my budget on the high side, the modulating. And then I really, now that you've explained it, I see what you're saying about the single stage furnace. Really don't think that's a good fit, but I like the pricing better. And then he kind of settled on the 2-stage and said, but I'm still not sure it's in my budget. And before I addressed that, I moved on to the installation to show him his options for installation, such as fresh air and filtration. And he liked those things and asked if those were things we could add later. And then said just simply, I don't think those things would be in my budget right now. So, okay, so at that point I was like, okay, well, what is your budget? And he said, well, I've got this Bryant credit card that we got through Wells Fargo where we can do like $5,000 is what I have available credit wise, because I've used it to buy the air conditioner a couple of years ago, and I'm still paying off the air conditioner. And so anyway, I went ahead and priced out an exact price on the 2-stage air conditioner. I mean, on a 2-stage furnace. And to do that, plus fix the zone damper motor, replace the zone damper motor, was $7,700, a little bit of change. And he said that's a little bit above my budget, but maybe we can make that work. And then I told him that we could get that credit limit increase perhaps, and I could do that while I'm here, and you would know exactly what your options are. He said, well, okay, well, before you do that, let me, I've got another company coming in the morning, but then we can talk and we can decide if we want to increase the budget at that point in time. So I left and gave him, or sent an email. You and I worked on the email together, sent him an email just recapping what we had discussed and what his options were. And at that point in time, we included the heat pump as an option in there, just so we had made that an offering that he could decline or ask about if he had questions about it. And we reiterated the importance of fixing the zone motor and the 2-stage. Why that would be important, because of the oversizing. And you can't get a furnace any smaller on a single stage because of the blower drive and things like that. So anyway, the next day he calls back.
Yeah, he needs a
And
4-ton blower drive, so you're limited to how low you can get the output.
right. And so anyway, he calls back the next day and said, okay, well, I found this other Bryant dealer, and he'll put in a 2-stage blower, I mean, a 2-stage furnace for $48.95.
Okay.
And so he just kept asking questions about tell me again why it's important to do the 2-stage, and why is it important to replace the zone motor. And he said that the other guy, because what we were talking about doing was locking out the heat in the high stage, because he has a zone, and he has a zone board that's just a single stage zone board. So he would have to replace his zone board if he wanted it to work in 2 stages in the heat. He has a single stage air conditioner. So if he wanted a high and a low, he's going to have to replace the zone board. And that other company said that they never heard of locking out the high stage, and they don't know how to do that. And I said, well, did they mentioned to you that you have to replace the zone board if you're going to operate it in high and low. And he said they didn't ever mention that. I said, well, I
You want
wonder
me
if
to
it,
price his own board? Sorry.
yeah, I mean, I said, well, I wonder if they were just going to put it in high stage and it would just never go in low stage, because
What's the point of getting a 2-stage if you're going to do that?
and then
Sort of defeats the whole purpose.
and then I said, well, what did they say about your financing options? Because we built into our prices 0% for 36 months, because we had talked about that and we were figuring the payment, and that was had some value to him. And he said, yeah, they didn't mention any terms. And so I'm bringing up the sheet here, and like if they're not mentioning terms, I mean, it's 28.9% interest. Are they going to charge you 28.9% interest? So, well, I don't know. They didn't talk about terms. And I said, well, it sounds like you've got a decision to make. And we did the math, and I was like $2,200 difference. And so I started doing what I've been taught is called the walk of life, and where you're just selling the difference. So here's, is there $2,200 worth of value in our company versus this other Bryant dealer? And one of the things is we offer a 5-year labor warranty, and that company offered 1-year warranty on labor. The other thing is that he asked questions about that was important to him is, how many technicians do we have if he had an issue? And that other company was a small company and is really just the owner, and he does the sales calls and the service work. So, if he has a decision to make about coming out here to do a warranty call versus going to go do a money call,
He's going
how
to
does
get
he
lower
prioritize that? Right. And you said that he doesn't have the knowledge on how to do the high and low. And I said, I planted the seed about third-party story of, some of these other companies that are known to be lowball companies, where they'll come out and offer you a really low price to get in the door. Then once they get it, they'll be like, oh,
We need
well,
this, we need this, we need this.
yeah, we're going to replace the zone board because otherwise it's not going to work. And would you like for us to do that while we're here? I mean, it's like another $1,500 or whatever. And I mean, people think that you wouldn't fall for that or agree with that or whatever, but because you're in the middle of this and you don't have heat, people do it. And I see that often. Anyway, so I said, is that one of those companies? I don't know. So that's something you need to think about. And then I just asked him, you tell me why you would want to do business with me. And he said, well, your knowledge, he said, first of all, I had several companies come out here, and you were the only one that actually went into the attic and looked at the motors, the zone motors. And you were actually the only one that explained the 2-stage and the single stage. And that was the only reason I even considered the 2-stage. So anyway, so we got off the phone. He was still kind of hung up on the price, the $48.95, and was acting like he was willing to take that risk at the time. And so anyway, you and I worked on an email together, and we sent it
I
to
gave
him.
him one of my Hail Marys.
Right. And so we sent that to him. And then the next morning he called, and you and I were actually on the phone. So you ever heard the conversation, but he, he seemed kind of mad at us. Like we were the parent and he's the child, and we told him what he had to do. But that's not really how it went. It's just, we gave him the options and we're just honest with him. And even though he didn't really like the truth, we gave him the truth. And he reiterated that again, that we were the only ones that went into the attic. We were the only ones that took the time to explain it to him. And even though it cost more money, he saw more value in it. Is that what you heard?
Well, plus I told him that whole decision was a little bit of a Rube Goldberg, and you were happy to, not be involved.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you really should probably be looking harder at replacing that 4-ton air conditioner, which is completely the wrong size, and forcing you to get the completely wrong size furnace. And the only thing that I would probably have done different is knowing that they didn't really use the space that zone valve. So I didn't understand that there were 3 zone valves and 2 zone valves were on one zone, and the broken zone valve was serving rooms they didn't really use. I probably would have said, well, if you're not using those rooms, let's just lock that zone open.
Mhm.
But I don't know that matters all that much. It's just, I think the price that you offered him looked bigger than the actual difference because of the zone valve. And so
Right.
if you just said, let's just lock this open, you wouldn't have had to have that price in your price.
Right. That's true.
And by not having that price in your price, it also could have created some, it's good to create discomfort over zones, help people understand that, look, this zoned equipment, particularly if it's not communicating carrier infinity, it doesn't have any idea what the airflow thing is. And even with bypass, you're bypassing heated air. So the equipment's short cycling and it's overheating.
Mhm.
And so the equipment's going to last 5 to 10 years instead of 15 to 20 because of the cycling. The equipment's rated on cycles. And if you put it in a condition where it's either overheated or overcooled, that hurts it too, because it has a place that it likes to be, and you're outside of that specification. The same as the airflow. It has a place that it likes to be, and you take it outside of that specification, bad things happen.
Right.
So all of that, like creating the uncertainty around zoning, because we get rid of zoning all the time. And if you right size the equipment and the equipment never shuts off, the whole need for zoning, you have a sunroom that's all glass and it's west facing. Maybe you need to do something special for that. But for most houses, the load delta can be mitigated by just having that fan running all the time, particularly if it's moving BTU.
Right. Yep. So we put it on the schedule. They installed it on a Friday, yes, before the end of the year, and went smooth. Guys very happy.
Nice. So
But,
how much did you sell last month?
95,000.
95,000, and that's 10 leads, 7 of which use the HVAC20 process on.
Right. So it was 70% closed for the month. We still have one open from the from the free quote process.
Okay. So you're 100% on the free quote process so far, and waiting for this one, which is going to kick to January, to determine whether or not you're 6 for 6 or 7 for 7.
Right.
So the first 3 leads that you had that you didn't use the HVAC20 process on, you didn't get any of them.
Right. I think I got one of the 3 because the way I track it, that one is counting as a no sell right now. So there was 3 leads that I must have sold one of them.
Okay. And that's sort of important for people to know, because you're looking kind of like a superhero here.
Mm-hmm.
And so if out of your 3 leads that you ran that weren't HVAC20, You got one of them, shows that you're a good salesperson, but no superhero.
Right.
And what's your closing ratio for the whole year?
So 51%.
Okay. That also helps people understand you're not closing every job.
Right.
Um,
51%. We run a lot of, real estate rental properties. We do that sometimes too. So it's all
right.
working
Those are hard
into the.
if you don't have the relationship. So, and what's your average revenue per lead for the year?
So it's 66.
6,600.
Yeah, 66.5, I believe,
Okay.
in round numbers.
I think that's a good average revenue per lead. I think
Right.
anything over 6,000 is top tier. But I don't have any statistics to back that up, so it's just basically intuition. Well, anything we forgot to cover?
I think need to reiterate the importance of the emails. I think that's helping me a lot. That's something I haven't done before. The follow-up email, and then really the follow-up to the follow-up. So we've sent a couple of emails after the fact that kind of help close these other jobs that I didn't close on the first visit.
Okay, can you
So
talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, so just staying engaged with them. They're asking questions. On the follow-up email, I sent them the report and circled, what we talked about, the ones that they had picked for their
Smiley faces.
ideal, with the smiley faces and their ideal specification, and highlighted, their comfort issues that they wanted addressed, and then also sent them link. Here's the video that you watch for your reference if you'd like to see it again or show it to anybody. And here are a couple other videos that you didn't see that you might be interested in, or if you need more information. And then following up again with a like a non-needy message, which is, I don't care if you do business with us or not. It's not, we don't need the work, but the path you're taking is wrong, and it's going to cause you some future pain if you continue down that path.
Path you're taking is risky.
Mm-hmm.
This path you're on is risky. You're assuming some risk you need to be aware of.
And I just don't want it to be my fault that
I don't want it to be my fault that you took that risk unaware of the fact that you were taking that risk. So I'm telling you right now, you're taking some risk here, because it's my job to help you understand the risks. So that I'm not responsible if that risk comes back to bite you.
Right. And this guy with the furnace, I mean, he called us back and he was not happy that I brought those risks to his attention.
No.
But he chose to do
but
business
that's
with
because
us.
I have a tendency to stick it up people's asses if they get to be a little bit slow.
Right.
So I'm sure you would have worded that much nicer and more appropriately.
Right. So that's what we did. And thank you very much for helping.
Thank you.